When's the last time you've been up there?
Or I don't go up there anymore.
You refuse, right?
Yeah, I just fucking what they've done up there, what they did with the trucker rally, and what Trudeau's doing with guns, and what they're trying to clamp down on censorship on the internet. That guy can eat shit. Like that place needs 100% an overhaul of government. Like they're sliding down that dangerous road of communism that scares the shit out of me.
When's the last time you've been up there?
Or I don't go up there anymore.
Shit.
You refuse, right?
Yeah, I just fucking what they've done up there, what they did with the trucker rally, and what Trudeau's doing with guns, and what they're trying to clamp down on censorship on the internet. That guy can eat shit. Like
I wanna put that on
that
a
place
shirt.
needs 100% an overhaul of government.
You say that it needs an overhaul of government. Them is insurrectionist words up in Canada, Joe. You can get locked away for that. Have your bank account taken away for that. Frozen. They might lock you up in one of them government designated quarantine facilities. Funny thing is, I posted that video on Twitter, and then I get some responses. I won't call them Justin Trudeau boot-licking sycophants. I would if I didn't know them. I actually happen to know one person with whom I'm engaging on Twitter who says, her retort is, Canada was rated the number 2 country in the world to live in. I don't know how they measure these things. I don't know how what goes into the top countries to live in. I mean, America's number 5. Australia is number 4. Canada seems to be number 2 on the list of best countries in the world. Look at this. It's very scientific. The overall ranking of best countries measure global performance on a variety of metrics. Switzerland is the best country in the world for 2023. Okay, Switzerland. Canada. Switzerland, GDP per capita, $83,000. Canada, $58,000. Sweden, $65,000. Not that money is everything. Australia, if you're not getting locked into your 5-kilometer radius in your house during Dictator Dan's reign of terror during COVID, it's a pretty nice place. When you can leave your house, it's a nice place. United States, number 5. All right, so some I don't know what the question was. What's the best? All objective metrics. What to do? Crime, green space, environment, tyranny. Can you operate a bank account without risk of having it frozen? Can you have a 13-year-old kid who can go to the cinema without having to show a vaccine passport? Detailed questions. But then I was like, okay, show me the poll. I'd like to know the question. And I get the answer. Oh, the U.S. News rated it number 2. I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I guess it depends on what question you ask and who you ask it to. This is from December 9th, 2023. That's 3 days ago. Canada's surging cost of living fuels reverse immigration. You know what reverse immigration is called? Exodus. It's the best country in the world. It's just that record number of immigrants who came there between a certain year are leaving. It's a record. It's the number 2 country in the world to live in. But people from foreign countries who left, communist style countries who left tyranny to come to Canada are leaving. It's such a great country that there's a mass exodus, not just of new immigrants, but of Canadians. And the only way to compensate for that is to open up the borders to mass immigration so the government can say, well, look, we're still have a net positive. We're still growing because we've opened our borders because we have a massive amount of immigrants, new immigrants who are leaving. I mean, I can tell you that I knew of immigrants, I won't specify the country because I don't want to get anybody identified, who came to Canada, who were literally being paid to live in Canada, in Quebec, and learn French. And they said, I'm going back to the country that I left because I hate it here so much. And it's not just the cold winters, people. It's the cold communism. So Justin Trudeau should eat shit is probably a great intro to today's stream, which is going to be with Ken Drysdale from the National Citizens Inquiry. I think everybody watching knows roughly what that is, but I don't think people understand the scope of it, the tenor of it, what they did, what evidence they adduced, and what they produced by way of final report. I testified during one of the hearings. It was fun. It's always fun to tell your story. So we're going to talk about that. But before we get into that, so we're going to do the National Citizens Inquiry. We're going to move on over to Rumble and vivabarneslaw.locals.com sooner than later. Should have checked this earlier. Are we live? We're live and we're all good. Volume is too low. Maybe that was on my volume just compared to Joe Rogan's. I'll put up the volume a little bit. Are we live on Viva? Okay. So vivabarneslaw.locals.com, they were talking about the volume too. Yeah, that's frustrating because sometimes the audio clip is very loud and I don't have real-time stuff. Doesn't matter. We are live on Rumble. We are live on vivabarneslaw.locals.com, and we're live on YouTube. For those of you who don't know me, Viva Frei, Viva Barnes, here we go. Montreal litigator turned Florida rumbler. We start on YouTube, Rumble, and vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We're going to end on YouTube sooner than later. Not strictly because of the subject of conversation. I'm probably going to post this entire stream to YouTube later. But because Rumble is the free speech platform, and when a platform is getting attacked from China, from overseas, DDoS attacks, whatever, politically motivated attacks, you know they're over the target, and you know you have to support them through the good times and the bad, or the frustrating. I mean, being down for 8 hours is a first world problem. It's a very, it's a serious business interruption. We have to bear with them, and we have to support them because the fact that they are under attack means that they're doing something right. Okay, and before we get into anything today, hold on, now I hear myself in the background. You may have noticed that it says this stream contains a paid promotion, which it does, people. And if you want to shed the shackles of big tech oligarchy, is that the word, or big tech corruption? Google, YouTube oversight, they know your moves, they know you better than your spouse knows you. You know, your spouse can probably know what to get you for Christmas because they'll Google it and then you'll get recommendations. If you want to break free of the shackles, you can start with StartMail. Are you fed up with targeted phishing emails? Fed up with spam cluttering your inbox? I can tell you that I am. It's my own doing. I signed up for one of those, I donated money somewhere, and I think they sold my email address, and I'm just getting inundated. It happens to be GOP stuff, and I have to go unsubscribe from each one. I'm fed up with that. Concerned about companies like Google and government spying on your private conversations, then it's time to switch to StartMail. StartMail is a secure alternative to Gmail that lets you send emails like they're in a sealed envelope. I think the word is encrypted. Making sure your communication stays private and secure. Services like Google collect your data and use it for targeted ads. If the product is free, you're the product. The problem with Google is it's not even free anymore. If you want to maintain your data, you have to pay whatever, $3 a month. StartMail is strictly ad-free service that does not collect or share data with third parties for advertising or tracking. Your StartMail account comes with all the features you need, including some you might not even know you want, disposable email addresses to protect your inbox from phishing scams and hacking attempts. Switching to StartMail is super easy. If you're worried about old emails stored on Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, etc., people still use Yahoo. They've got you covered. StartMail hassle-free migration tool lets you move your emails and contacts with just a few clicks. No technical knowledge required. Over the past decade, StartMail has become a trusted name in email privacy, so why wait any longer? Do it. Oh, wait. Do it. Do it. Switch to StartMail Experience Secure Email. By the way, what do you get? You get 50% off your first year subscription if you go with startmail.com/Viva. The link is in the description. And the way to break free of the shackles of big tech spying and tyranny is to support the companies that don't do it. And with that said, we'll be heading over to Rumble sooner than later. The link to StartMail is in the description, and I see my guest in the backdrop removing this. I hope I didn't cuss too much already for the guest. I don't think I have. I think he's got a sense of humor. Although they do say on YouTube you're not supposed to drop the F-bomb or the SH-bomb within the first 60 minutes, but F that. All right. Ken, you ready to come in? All right, here we do it, people. We're going to do the intro, and then we're going to go over into, let's say 6 or 7 minutes, we'll go over to Rumble. Adding Ken to the stage. Sir, how goes the battle?
Wonderful. Good morning, everybody. We had a bit of a snowstorm here in Manitoba last night, but everybody seems to be digging out, and they're happy.
What's a bit of a snowstorm? How many inches?
Well, it wasn't inches. It was blowing like mad, because I can tell you we live an hour out of Winnipeg, and I went last night to see the new Godzilla movie. Everybody should see it. It's fantastic. But driving home at 10 o'clock at night, the wind was howling at it. You just couldn't see it.
And this is straight flat roads where you get like snow blowouts very easily.
Yeah, absolutely. You know it, man.
Oh yeah, no. Well, I've driven to Calgary. Let me just think about this. No, I've driven to Winnipeg from Montreal, but then not further west. And then I've driven from Calgary all around. So I've never actually driven through the flatlands plains, but I've now driven from Texas or through Texas to New Mexico and to Alabama. So I've seen flatlands, but never never out there. Ken, for those who may not know who you are, and there might be a lot of them because I have got a big American audience, and the question is going to be making the American audience appreciate all of the work that has been done through the National Citizens Inquiry and updating Canadians who may not have followed it to the end. Who are you?
Well, the National Citizens Inquiry was initiated by the citizens of Canada. They felt that they needed someone to step up and actually investigate what the heck the government did during the pandemic and the lockdowns and all the mandates. And they didn't trust the government to do that. And I'm sure that's not a surprise to your audience. We saw enough what I would call biased or even criminal investigations carried out by the government. There was the investigation into the Emergencies Act, and lo and behold, that found that the government did nothing wrong. There was the SNC-Lavalin issue. There was the all kinds of different scandals and issues with this government that happened in Canada. And every single time it was investigated, either it was no problem or all they did was scold the government, and there was no consequences. So the Canadian people are tired of that. They're fed up with that, and they wanted somebody to come in and figure out just what happened and what the consequences of that was. And that's where NCI picked up. That's what they did.
So now the NCI, if I'm timelining it right, was not in response to, but it came subsequent to Commissioner Rouleau's finding, or did it start before that?
It came subsequent to.
Okay.
Like it was originally initiated in 2022 as a thought experiment, as a exam. They did one. I think they did 1 day of hearings. That was before I was involved. And then the way the NCI happened really started in the end of February of 2023, and it culminated just now on November 28th with the final report.
Okay, now because what happened, for those who may not be aware of this, in Canada, I mean, the whole world went, I'll swear a little bit, batshit crazy during COVID, tyrannical crazy during COVID. There was no real, I mean, there has yet to be any form of accountability. We still only get redacted contracts, redacted agreements after FOIA requests, or the equivalent in Canada, of the government. So we have no idea really what happened. We thought we would get some transparency or some look into the, under the hood during Commissioner Rouleau's, what do they call that? They called it was the commission to look into the invocation of the Emergencies Act required by law. It went on for 6 weeks. I mean, it ended up looking like, and basically being, I don't know, like it basically let Justin Trudeau off scot-free. We didn't really get many answers from it, and people were left very angry, despondent. And so in response to that, you say, we're going to get our own commission. We're going to get our own inquiry, because if the government's not going to, if it's going to lift up the hood and say, oh yeah, there's a wipe off a little bit of the dust, but not go into the mechanics, we'll do it ourselves. Who had the initial idea to do this? And, and then how did it get going?
Well, there were a number of people that got together. I believe Preston Manning was involved at the very beginning, and Brian Peckford had some involvement at the beginning. And then they just pulled together a group of interested people. And I want to emphasize to the audience that these are everyday Canadians that got together. There was no government funding. There was no corporate funding. There was no pharma funding. It was Canadians that got together and had enough, and they really wanted to know what happened. So they chipped in. It was all volunteers. I think we had thousands of volunteers, and I think there were 3 people that were paid. I think we had one of the assistants was paid, and 2 other people, I believe, but everything else was by volunteers.
I'm just trying to figure, the chat is saying one of our mics is too high and too low. I'm going to figure out whose it is. What's the binding precedent? I mean, people are going to say, okay, good. So you get a bunch of citizens together to look into, this, and you carry on some inquiries, some investigations, testimonies, etc. But ultimately, there's no binding value to this report other than what it fleshed out in terms of its own evidence.
Well, Canadians in particular have to stop thinking that they look to the government to do something. I've been asked this question many times. What's the point of this? Is it just a document sitting on a shelf somewhere? Well, it could be. But the Canadians can't expect the government to pick this thing up, which is very condemning to all levels of government about what they had done. It's up to Canadians to pick this up. And the first thing they need to do is they need to educate themselves as to what happened. You know, I was fairly well versed with what happened in Canada before I became a commissioner in the NCI, but I can't. It was order of magnitudes of the information I found out and how it affected Canadians. You know, we had over 300 witnesses give sworn testimony in this hearing, and it was conducted like a judicial hearing. So there was a spectator gallery, there was the witness, there was lawyers that questioned and cross-examined, and then there was the 4 commissioners, and we also questioned or cross-examined the witnesses. It was all sworn testimony, and it was all recorded, and it was all
Transcribed.
Transcribed, every word of it. So we've created this incredible historical document, which you can go pick up and you can hear the words of everyday Canadians, and you'll hear horrific stories that people I didn't even imagine happened. And so the first thing that this report should do is it should start waking people up. You know, there's an old quote that from Admiral Yamashita, I think, in World War II, they said, well, what do you think this raid has done? And he said, well, I think that all we've done is awakened a sleeping giant and filled it with a terrible rage. And I hope that's what this report does. I hope it wakes up sleeping Canadians, and those sleeping Canadians wake up in a really bad mood when they find out exactly what happened. So,
chat is going to tell me if the audio's. I'm tinkering with your audio versus mine because apparently you're coming in loud and I'm coming in soft. While I tinker with that, though, your background is in engineering.
Yes.
40 plus years. I mean, professionally, flesh out your professional experience and how you came to have the role that you had with the National Citizens Inquiry. That's what it stands for, people. NCI is the National Citizens Inquiry.
Well, as you said, I am a professional engineer for over 40 years. I've owned engineering companies. I did a lot of work over the 40 years in what's called forensic engineering. And what that is, for folks who don't know, is when something falls down, blows up, doesn't work, or somebody gets hurt, they'll come and hire me to do an investigation. And I would look into the circumstances of those failures or those accidents, figure out what went wrong, write an expert report, and then I would have to defend that in trial or in an adjudication or some other form of judicial hearing. So I had that kind of experience for 40 years. And then prior to the NCI actually happening, I got involved and I wrote an initial report called An Investigation into Alleged Criminal Actions of the Government. And the folks can find that. It's on a website called thetruefactsc19.com. And that report, it simply looked at statistics. So it took the numbers that Statistics Canada or the Government of Canada was reporting with regard to mortalities, and it looked at your odds of dying. So it looked at if you were between a certain age, we looked at the odds, according to Statistics Canada, of you dying of just any reason. And then we compared that to the odds they said you had of dying of COVID. And it was shocking what we found out. You know, if you were 18 years of age and younger, your risk of dying of COVID was like 1 in 4 million. And your risk of dying, I think it was 1 in 5 or 6,000 of any cause. Okay. So that was my initial involvement in the movement, so to speak. And then about a year later, the National Citizens Inquiry approached me if I would become involved as a commissioner with their inquiry.
All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to move it on over to Rumble. So the link is there, everybody, and I hope I've tinkered with the audios. Okay, we're going to go over to Rumble right now. So the link is there. Share it one more time. If anybody wants to come to vivabarneslaw.locals.com, we'll have our patented after party there afterwards. Do it now, ending on YouTube, because we're going to get into the thick of this. The findings of the report, who they allowed to testify, or who they had testify, ending on YouTube in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. vivabarneslaw.locals.com and Rumble.